Defines people's lives are brushes with greatness. What is Michigan greatness? It's tradition. It is a bar that is raised so high that some people choose not to even attend the University of Michigan.
Everybody that's for us is for us.
Top to bottom, Michigan is about excellence, is about greatness. And you have my pledge that I will carry forward the tradition of excellence of the University of Michigan football program. Thank you very much.
Michigan, home of the maize and blue. It has been a rough year for you guys. It has been completely forgettable, and it sucks seeing the big house empty, and it has just been a weird season. And all of that added up to the big game getting canceled this year versus Ohio State, and it's just been a tragic mess with Michigan. Michigan is obviously one of the most historic programs in sports. They are the all-time winningest program in college football history. But for a school that hasn't won a Big Ten title since 2004 and hasn't won a national championship since 1997, things in Ann Arbor just have not been good. And in the past 50 years, Michigan has had only 2 losing seasons, and this year is going to be a third, and that is 3 losing seasons from the past 3 coaching staffs. And it is looking like the Michigan man that was supposed to save the program will not be accomplishing his goal that he set out when he got to Michigan. All of the fans thought he would. He was supposed to turn around Michigan football. So what exactly does Michigan do going forward? How do they fix this mess that just seems like a never-ending loop? How do they catch back up to being one of the top teams in college football? There is so much incredible history there that dates back way before my time. 11 claimed national titles, 3 Heisman winners, 83 consensus All-Americans. So with all that history, it makes sense why Michigan fans have such big expectations. But before I deep dive into the downfall of Michigan, I would love to thank Audible for sponsoring this video. I personally love listening to sports books because it's hard to find time to read them. There are so many great stories about teams and coaches that help me understand sports better, so sitting down to read is not always the easiest thing to do. And if you are impatient like me, Audible is the leading provider for spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers and new releases to celebrity memoirs, languages, business, motivation, and more. And they even have original content and podcasts. Now, it's not football related, but I've recently been listening to Burke's Law: A Life in Hockey, the biography of former NHL general manager Brian Burke, who's in my opinion one of the most interesting men in hockey. The best part about Audible was I was able to listen to him personally read the book because I could have it on in the background while being able to work and do other tasks throughout my day. I think that Brian Burke has a lot of great ideas that don't just translate to hockey, but can translate to business and really all other sports. That's why I really recommend his book. It's extremely interesting to listen to, and Brian Burke just has that voice that makes his story interesting. And that's why Audible is great, because you can listen to him read the book to you. So to get Audible, you can use my code by visiting audible.com/cadams or text cadams 500. You will love what Audible has to offer. Every book you can think of is on there, and you will be able to find something you want to listen to, even if you are not looking for a book, because Audible offers all sorts of products like podcasts, stories, and entertainment. Again, you can use my code by visiting audible.com/cadams or text cadams 500. 2007's kind of where I want to start for Michigan, because that's kind of where the downfall began. Because, they lost to Appalachian State in their first game, and Lloyd Carr was sent out after their last game versus Florida, and then the Rich Rodriguez era began, and he was bringing a crazy good offense from West Virginia to Michigan. But when he took over this program, they went Black Widow and Endgame. It got bad. They went over a cliff. 2008 through 2014 were very, very bad, and Rich Rod just, didn't do great there. They went 3-9, 5-7, and 7-6. They played terrible defense, and it was a miserable hire. And then after the Rich Rodriguez era, they then hired a guy kind of like Ed Orgeron, a Michigan man. He beat Ohio State during the Luke Fickell era. His name was Brady Hoke. His first year at Michigan was a massive success. The team went 11-2. They had an all-time classic in the Retros versus Notre Dame. Everybody remembers that. Like I said, they beat Ohio State, and then they beat Virginia Tech in the Sugar Bowl, and it looked like they found their guy, the Michigan man. But the next 3 seasons after that, they went 8-5, 7-6, and 5-7, and those were filled with losses to unranked teams that they shouldn't have lost to. And then after that, it's the Harbaugh era. Here we go. They brought back their guy, the former quarterback, the Michigan man, the offensive coach who transforms quarterbacks, who can coach both college and pro. He did it at Stanford, did it with the 49ers, and he was just coming off a Super Bowl appearance with the 49ers. And in 2014, when Harbaugh was introduced, it felt like a movie. So much optimism. Everyone was happy. He was the Michigan man. He was going to save this program, but 6 years later, Everyone is freaking out because this was supposed to be their guy, and it just has not been that. Not only did people want him in college, they also wanted him in the NFL, so when Michigan got this guy, it was a big deal. People legit begged for him to come to Michigan. It was all they wanted. Now, interesting enough, Les Miles was a Michigan man that other people kind of wanted as well, but I don't think that would have been good if they got him, because he's not doing very well at Kansas right now. But Jim Harbaugh has a record of 49-22 at the time of this recording. He has 3 10-win seasons and definitely improved recruiting there. But the skeptics also say that he has 0 Big Ten titles, 0 wins over Ohio State, and is 0-4 in their last 4 bowl games. Now, things started off great for Michigan. Yes, they lost their first game over Utah, but then they beat number 22 BYU and 13 Northwestern. But then the Michigan State game happened, and they got blown out at home versus Ohio State, but they did beat Florida in their bowl game, and 2016 Michigan was their best team in a long time there. They brought in new uniforms with Jordan Brand. They started out 9-0. They went all the way up in the rankings to number 2, and then the game versus Iowa happened, and they lost by a single point. Now they still got back up to number 3, and then they played number 2 Ohio State in the best game the rivalry's ever had in a long time, where they lost a heartbreaker in double overtime 30-27, and then they lost by 1 point to Florida State in their bowl game. Now 2017 was the John O'Corn year, which was not good, and 2018 was a good season. They went 10-3. They lost in the Peach Bowl, however, and then 2019 was the 9-4 season, and they lost in the Citrus Bowl. Now both these seasons were led by Shea Patterson, but Shea just never did enough for Michigan, obviously, and they never got those big wins that they needed. And entering this year, it's been bad. It's been very bad.
This is bad. This is very bad.
And what Michigan does now, no one knows. But this year, they've beat themselves in games. They started off 1-3, which was their worst start since 1967. Now, they won their first game over number 21 Minnesota. That looked like a big deal. They dominated them. Then after that, they lost to Michigan State. They then lost to Indiana, a good Indiana team, I will add, but they still lost. Then they got blown out at home versus Wisconsin. Then they barely beat Rutgers at Rutgers. Then they lost to Penn State, who's having a terrible year. And then their games versus Maryland and Ohio State to end out the season were canceled because of COVID. It's been a terrible, very forgettable year for Michigan fans. Hopefully it's the worst year that we'll ever see Michigan again. It's been that bad. But the question is, what's gone wrong there? 2017, they had their 5th best recruiting class with Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and they looked like they were back, but they haven't had a class since then. And really 4 years ago, when he did sign his best recruiting class, they were coming off back-to-back 10-win seasons. They barely lost to Ohio State, and people thought this was just the start for Michigan. Everyone looked at him for bringing Michigan back, but obviously since then, it's not been that at all. I mean, when Harbaugh got to Michigan, the buzz was back. I will admit, if you remember back in 2015 and 2016, coaches were calling out Harbaugh for setting up satellite camps, and they created a rule for this, so you couldn't do this. But Harbaugh was going down to the southern states and setting up football camps there, and he set off a lot of SEC coaches. So he was very innovative when he got back in college football. But since then, Michigan guys just don't fight for him. And this is the biggest thing that stands out for me, is that his team just doesn't look like they really want to be out there and play. And they really fold in games where they shouldn't. They don't really have a lot of fight in them. They give up pretty easily. Now, 10 of Michigan's 11 national titles came before 1949. Michigan is kind of the Yankees of football, or the Montreal Canadiens, or the Boston Celtics as of recently. They kind of live in the past a little bit. And they've only had 1 national title in 71 years, which was 1997, and that was a tie with Nebraska for the title. And the problem is they're always trying to replicate being Ohio State, and they're just not Ohio State. That's just how it is. And the expectations are kind of why Jim is a little bit overrated. He's done good for Michigan, but the fact that everyone there wants him gone, or wants him to be Nick Saban, or be like a Urban Meyer, it just frustrates people. And I think the biggest mistake is kind of how he acts. He's kind of just stands on the sidelines. I haven't seen him smile in years. Legit, I don't think this guy has any emotion recently. I just don't understand what has happened to Jim Harbaugh. This is not the same coach. I've made a video about it. After their loss to Wisconsin, I made a video talking more about that type of stuff, but it just doesn't look like the same coach he used to be. And I know Michigan fans want them to be Ohio State. I get that. Ohio State's obviously one of the top teams in college football, but there's another college football program that I think is much more attainable to be like, that Michigan fans should really try to change their expectations on wanting to be. You want to know what makes Michigan look so bad? It's Notre Dame and Brian Kelly, in my opinion. Brian Kelly is what makes Jim Harbaugh look look so bad. Even though Harbaugh beat them, I know that happened. And they're very similar schools academic-wise. They're around the same area. They get the type of weather. They have the same type of history. But Notre Dame always can come up clutch and still make the playoffs. And maybe that helps that they're an independent school, but this year is really making it very obvious that Notre Dame's way ahead of Michigan when you really think about it. And I think that's the program that Michigan needs to aim for, and not Ohio State. Ohio State's just a different breed right now. I know that really upsets a lot of Michigan fans, and it honestly kind of upsets me how big of a discrepancy there is in college football between the very top and maybe just schools right below them. It's a big gap, but I think that Michigan needs to aim towards being a Notre Dame rather than Ohio State. And there's just no dog in Michigan at all. They are soft, completely soft, and it's really shown up this year. I don't know if it's the coaching staff. I don't know, maybe they just lose hope. It's a hectic year, I get that, but just all season, they started out in their first game, they looked great, but ever since then, they just don't seem to have a fight in them. And it's weird to say that because Jim Harbaugh is a very intense coach. You're just not seeing the execution out of his team. They just don't look like hard workers. I don't know what that is because of. Maybe you can let me know down in the comment section, but that's really been a big frustrating thing for Michigan fans. They're just not seeing a team that fights hard to be there. And I really think that has more to do with the coaching staff than it does the players. Great coaches can get their guys to buy into the system and to work hard every single week. We've seen that in the NFL with like a Belichick. Heck, we even see it down at Alabama with a Nick Saban, but we're just not seeing that out of Jim Harbaugh's team. And that's why, it's been 6 years. It's really kind of getting obvious that it's possibly time to move on. You're definitely seeing that from the fan base. Michigan fans are sick and tired of everything that has happened to them over the past couple of seasons. Now, I will admit that this season's record, even though it's been so bad, it makes the other years with Jim Harbaugh look so much better, like going 10-3, even though they lose their bowl games all the time. It still makes that look like, wow, that was actually not that bad compared to this season. But, you're only as good as your previous season, and right now Michigan is just not showing up. And it only keeps getting worse for them. Now, Ohio State fans would love for Jim to come back. I know that Ohio State fans keep saying that, but he did take a pay cut and he didn't want to sign an extension to prove himself, and because of COVID happening. So that's a bit of an honorable thing out of Jim Harbaugh, but it is starting to get interesting because there's reports coming out that NFL teams are interested in him. And I don't know if he's doing that so he can get another extension. That remains to be seen. I think Michigan wants to bring him back. I don't know. It's just a mess. Back in the day, getting Jordan Brand was a slick move. We've never really seen something like that out of college football programs. I know that he went to North Carolina and they introduced something with their football team with Jordan Brand, and then all the other college football programs were like, wow, maybe we could do something like this. And then Michigan decided to pull the trigger and do it. And that was big for them, but then we've seen Florida do it, Oklahoma, and it really just doesn't have that same impact that it once did. And Harbaugh is not getting recruits like he did early on, like a Rashawn Gary, Jabril Peppers. He just isn't getting guys like that. And Harbaugh is consistently bringing in new coordinators every year. Now, it is interesting because Alabama also rotates coaches a lot, but Saban has a system down and Harbaugh really doesn't have a system. And because he is a Michigan man, he just hasn't gotten fired. This was supposed to be their savior, and it just hasn't been that. And it's been a quarter of a century of mediocrity now, stretching across 4 coaching careers. This is a systemic issue with Michigan. Harbaugh has the same defeated look on his face as the 3 coaches who preceded him. The problem is not really just him, it is the program itself. But this year just has been so bad. His contract suggests that they should be one of the top teams in the nation, and his $46 million in 6 years and only 48 wins in that time looks really bad. Michigan only won 12 games once during the 1997 season, and Ohio State has won 12 times, 8 this decade. Harbaugh is a super awkward, weird guy and doesn't really hold long conversations or meetings, supposedly, and they just kind of skate by, and this really does seem like a systemic issue. Jim was supposed to save Michigan. He has had solid recruiting classes, and now we've hit this pandemic mode, and they can't beat anybody. Their defense is a mess. His contract is up at the end of this season, so they will probably make the decision after the year, but they really kind of need a fresh young face to come in because there's just such a big disconnect between the fans and the coaches. And I really do think Jim is to blame for that. He is the guy making the money, so he should be having these results, and obviously he's not because he can't even match the money he's made with total wins he's had. So we will kind of see what happens after the season. He needs to take a year off and learn how to fix himself as a coach. Not the Mike McCarthy route, but he needs to just go live in his RV, take some time off. And I really don't think any NFL team should go after him. I think that would be dumb because Harbaugh is just not the coach he used to be. Every year we say, next year we can hope it turns around, but I don't know if he can turn this around. This is just not going to end well. We are all very optimistic about this working, and really his first year was a massive success. Let's not lie to ourselves. But Jim just doesn't have much time to buy himself out of this. And really the worst thing Michigan could do is extend him. And now they've just fallen off a ledge, and it's just hard to recover from that. Do they mutually part ways? I could see that instead of him getting fired. But the reaction by Michigan fans if they bring him back, I don't know if it's going to be a 50-50 thing. I actually think it's going to be like more of a 90-10 type of thing, or 80-20, where fans do not want him back. It's kind of crazy seeing everybody turn on him because he was supposed to be the savior of Michigan. He's the Michigan man. You know, everybody at Michigan was so excited when he came back. I don't think there was a single person that was upset. Everybody was hyped. But really, since they kicked off their first game, you know, he's just lost a lot of his supporters along the way. And he was supposed to be their Urban Meyer or Nick Saban, but neither of those guys have their teams fall apart like this. And even when Urban left the game for a bit, Ohio State still looked pretty good. I also think you could make a reverse argument about Jim and say that he shouldn't get fired, and he has done well. He has had talent, but I think great coaches and their teams are pushing through a year like this, and the bad ones are flaming out, and the fake ones look the worst, and I think that's why Michigan looks so bad. Harbaugh can't develop a quarterback like he's supposed to. They can't stop the passing game on defense, and their passing game just looks terrible, and I think that's why it's such a bad look for Harbaugh. He was supposed to fix something like that. And yes, it's a COVID year, but I keep saying the best programs are staying the course and the weak ones are unraveling, and this is a bad look. They're not losing close games either. They are getting beat down. And like I mentioned earlier, is Harbaugh going to keep going, or is he going to go the Brian Kelly route and get things fixed? Or is he going to go the route of Mark D'Antonio where things keep getting worse? That's a great question. Now, if Jim does return, he needs to take a pay cut, maybe make his contract, salary incentive where he has to get so many wins, beat so many certain teams to get the money that he deserves. I think that can make a lot of sense if they do bring him back. I don't think fans would be as upset if they give him a contract like that, but he also needs to take a pay cut to bring in a great coaching staff around him because, that's what the best college programs have. They have a good coaching staff, and I just don't think Michigan has a good coaching staff. Now, I was a big Jim supporter, and I thought he would do great. I thought he just needed a little bit more time and things would get turned around, but the fact they've never had a stable quarterback, and really this year alone, is why I'm jumping ship. Now, a lot of good college football programs have systemic issues right now rather than just coaching. Nebraska, Texas, those are some big schools that are just not having great times right now, and Michigan joins them, obviously. But you really can't say that Michigan, it's hard to recruit there because the basketball team's getting recruits, and Notre Dame is doing pretty good, and I think they're a similar school like I've said a couple times. They just need a good offensive line at Michigan, and they need a quarterback for once. That's what they really need. And obviously player development and coaching, because Jim was brought there to develop their players, not recruit. They always get guys, it's Michigan obviously, and they're just not developing them. And he has not developed a single quarterback, which is odd because, he had Andrew Luck, he had Colin Kaepernick, he took him to a Super Bowl, but Michigan's just never had their quarterback. And Michigan's big problems are they live in the past so much, and they're just trying to live up to the expectation that they think they should have. Michigan sports fans have had it tough enough, having so many historic teams, but all of them are living in endless time loops of misery, like the Lions, the Red Wings, the Tigers. I mean, they've had so many great success stories, but all of them feel doomed, especially like the Pistons. But, Michigan hasn't won an outright championship since 1948. So, what does Michigan do? They're just such a unique program. There's not many that you can compare to them. So let's talk about who they would possibly hire if they got rid of Jim Harbaugh. Well, the one obvious one that sticks out to me is Matt Campbell from Iowa State. That would make a lot of sense. Matt Campbell's from Northern Ohio. He could recruit Ohio. He could build something like Iowa State. He's not the type of guy that will come in, make radical change all of a sudden. Gonna take him some time. But I do think Matt Campbell's name would look pretty good for Michigan. And that's about the only replacement I would say Michigan should hire if they were going to replace Jim Harbaugh. So I think that's gonna do it for my rambling, but yeah, I apologize, Michigan fans, or really anybody watching the video at this point, if this was a jumbled mess. I didn't really know how to orchestrate this or construct it into a nice video like you're used to, but that's Michigan for you. It's a hot mess, and it's really hard to even, talk about it because there's just so much going on there. But if you did enjoy the video, please let me know down in the comment section. I would greatly appreciate that because, maybe I can start doing more ramble videos like this where I just kind of lose my mind for a couple minutes because sometimes it's a little hard to construct a video like this when there is a lot to talk about. So, Michigan fans, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think they should do with Harbaugh. Let me know what you think about the state of the program, really. I'm very curious what Michigan fans have to think about this. But that will do it for me. Again, if you're new, please subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Hit the notification bell and leave a like. It would help the video out, help get your Michigan fans out there watching this. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.